Other than the date, and we have like 60 people registered in 3 days. So I'm so happy you are all able to be here because we had to cut off the registration. So good for you. I do have to say that we would not be here today if it was not for our presenting sponsor, Walker Miller Energy Services. They have now been our presenting sponsor for 3 years. So that shows the commitment. International Women's Day celebrates the progress towards a more just world and advocates for continued advancement towards parity and equality. This year's theme is Embrace Equity, which focuses on women forging change via technology and sustainability in communities, workplaces, and beyond, and convening leaders from across business, government, and civic institutions to discuss inclusive business practices and fostering diversity of thought is a role that we take very seriously, and we know that many of our member firms also take very, very seriously. Therefore, we're proud to continue to be a part of a global cohort that promotes the message of equity and diversity that happens through International Women's Day, International Women's Week. You know, to further promote the practice of equity, the Chamber is also committed each year to partnerships with local organizations that improve the lives of women globally. This year's beneficiary is Refuge for Nations. You should have seen that when you checked in downstairs. They are a nonprofit social enterprise committed to empowering refugee women who are located here across Metro Detroit. They provide all the support needed for immigrant and refugee women to thrive in a new life ahead of them and also their families. This includes providing new avenues for skilled trades, employment, housing assistance, English as a second language. Cynthia Kahn and Heidi Shear from Refuge from Nations are here with us today, and I hope that you will visit their table after the program to learn more about their organization and the great cause that they're taking care of. But Cynthia and Heidi, do you want to stand and be recognized? And I also see we have a Mrs. Universe with us. Congratulations for that. Proud to have that at our women's event. So finally, I'm not going to take up all the time here. We have too many fabulous women for you to hear from today. But I'd like to recognize a few of our equity advocates who have made our event possible today. As I mentioned, our presenting sponsor, for the 3rd year, Walker Miller Energy Services. I think there's a table right here somewhere with all of you, isn't there? Our gold sponsors, First Merchants Bank. Anybody here to stand and be recognized? There we go, right there. Our friends at Henry Ford Health, where are you? Hi, fun. And this, even for me, I have never remembered this company as a sponsor, and I can't wait to meet them. For Via Hella, where are you? So it's companies like these who really make this possible. And I did have two more that I have to recognize before I leave, and that's our silver sponsors. So Enbridge, you're in the room somewhere. And our friends at Visit Detroit, who are working so hard to make our city seen by so many new faces and people from all over the world. Where are you, Visit Detroit? Thank you for all you do. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Carla Walker Miller. So being a critical part of our International Women's Day as such a magnificent event, there's so many people to thank and so many of you that I'm grateful that you're here. But I get the opportunity to introduce the founder and chief executive officer of Walker Miller Energy Services, my beautiful friend, Carla Walker Miller.
Thank you, my beautiful friend, Tammy Carnwright. What a great day, and how wonderful it is to see so many women. You know, we don't get to go many places where there are 92.7% women in the room. So I am we really need to do more of these. I want to thank the Regional Chamber for the blessing, the privilege of being the sponsor for the third year in a row. And I don't know if you all remember, but discussions about equity are new. We've tossed around DEI, but we really focused on the D and the I. And the E is the goal of the D and I. So thank you, Tammy and Chamber, for really bringing equity in focus. I am the CEO and founder of a company that has the mission of empowering people in enriching communities. We change lives, and we do that by inviting people into the clean energy and equitable mobility space who don't have a natural on-ramp. How many of you all who aren't already in clean energy or mobility, how many of you all know how to get into those fields if you wanted to? Right, no one does. And right now, clean energy is not a very diverse field. Women are woefully underrepresented. Black people and brown people are underrepresented. But if we're going to do the really important work of solving climate change, not just fighting it, solving climate change, we need everyone, every community, every person, every representation to be involved in clean energy and the electrification of this country. So I invite you all to explore your place, because everyone has a place in clean energy. And I'm really excited because this conference, this day, we're talking about sustainability and technology, and several of my friends are going to be on the panel. So thank you all for spending your time with us, and I'm sure that there'll be something here that blesses you. But in the meantime, I have taken it upon myself to bless everyone's food already. So you all enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, please welcome special correspondent and anchor at WDIV TV4 NBC, Christy McDonald.
Well, hello, is this on? I appreciate the woos. I'll take any and all woos on a Wednesday afternoon. That's right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christy McDonald. I'm with WDIV Channel 4. It is wonderful to be here. The 5th annual International Women's Day event the Detroit Regional Chamber has put on. And I think I have emceed all of them, Five Timers Club. These are really important events for me and conversations to have. And I told my almost 14-year-old daughter where I was heading to today. She's 14 tomorrow. Teens, right? She asked me what we were going to do here today. And she said, well, you guys going to change the world? I said, maybe. And then she said, we should probably make a TikTok video about that. I said, not likely. But it really got me to thinking about what we all do want to hear today. We seek common experiences. We seek to learn from other women. We want to hear, I think, really, that we are not alone. What is inspiring to you? I'll tell you what's inspiring to me. It's the messy things. And I work in television, which would seem to be not very messy, but it is. Oh, it is. Because we really cover people's lives. Laws that change people's lives, accidents that change people's lives, stories that can inspire us. But it's never really that perfect ending that sticks with us, right? That impacts us. I find that the layers of the onion, the messy, is so much more interesting because that's how I learn. Yesterday, I sat down with a young woman who is the new president of Atwater Brewery. And I asked her how difficult it was to knock down the doors as a young woman in the beverage industry, the beer industry, because she was not wearing a flannel and did not have a beard. So she kind of stuck out in the craft beer industry. And she said, oh, well, it's actually not that pretty. It was kind of hard. And I leaned in. I said, tell me more. Because don't we learn more from each other when we show up as ourselves? Not that carefully curated version of, I worked really hard and then I made it and I'm here now. And telling you all of the easy parts and just saying, if you just work hard, it'll be fine. It's the no filter. It was difficult for me to get out of the house this morning looking like this feeling, right? The real solutions, the hard roads, the decisions that maybe weren't the best that we made, but the knowledge that once we tripped, we got up, we grew, we learned, and we kept going. And I think that's really the brilliance of a day like today, the authenticities of the stories that bind us all together in this room. I'm into a lot of quotes lately, I think because I spend some time on Instagram. And I brought a quote here for you today by a writer named Glennon Doyle. She said, be messy, complicated, and afraid, and show up anyway. Yes, I've learned this. Yeah, applause for that. I've learned this really, really well because I struggle as a mother. I struggle as a journalist. I struggle as a widow. I struggle as a 50-year-old woman who is in the beginning of her second act. And I think I struggle because I just told you how old I am on a microphone. But let me ask you this. How do we choose to show up in this world together? And how, as women, can we show up for each other? I want you to think about that today because we have some dynamic women in this room who will be speaking with us in just a short moment. Really passionate and wonderful as we focus on Embrace Equity today, which is the theme of International Women's Day. But it's really all of our stories that can elevate and push us all forward because we know the work is hard and we know we are not finished. So this is how things are going to go here through the afternoon. Each of our panelists will get to speak to you one-on-one in kind of a TED Talk style. And then they will join me all back up here on our Oprah stage, I like to say. And we will have a panel discussion. We're not just going to be talking at you. We want you to be part of the discussion as well. There are blue cards on your table. If you have questions for any of our panelists, you hear them speaking, you've got something that pops into your head, something that we're talking about on the panel that you want to get in on, write it down on the card. And people from the chamber will be walking around, will pick up those questions, and they'll pass them on to me. And your questions will be part of our discussion. So with that, let's get started with our first speaker. Our first speaker this afternoon is Deanna Ahmed.
Please welcome the Vice
Okay.
President of Strategy, Policy, and Sustainability at Our Next Energy, Deanna Ahmed.
For me to be here today with all of you, and I'm really grateful to be in this room, this beautiful room, with all of these wonderful women and others who are here to celebrate International Women's Day. Working? Maybe not working. Should I just keep going? I will keep going anyways. So I'm really grateful to be here today. My name is Deanna Ahmed. I'm the Vice President of Strategy, Policy, and Sustainability at One, Our Next Energy. We are a new company headquartered in Novi, Michigan. We're working to bring energy storage manufacturing to the state and to really help to drive the energy transition. I'm here to talk today about my unique background and how we embrace uniqueness as a power and a tool to allow us to have impact in any space that we want to or are called to have impact in. So I started my career thinking I was going to be in medicine. I was pre-med at the University of Michigan. I fell in love with public health through doing some medical mission work globally and thinking about how impact really can be driven further upstream if we want to solve problems before we arrive at a medical situation. In understanding public health, I was drawn to understanding how our food systems in the United States, particularly with children, have an impact on health and have an opportunity to prepare students for their future. So I began studying at Tufts University, at one of the country's only school of nutrition, science, and policy in the country. Was able to do a lot of research on how the impact of school breakfast and universal meals and healthier meals actually have a palpable, measurable difference on children academically. And really that started to validate my understanding of going upstream and working upstream. And so then I found myself in policy after completing 2 master's degrees at Tufts and working in the USDA to help to improve our school lunch standards to try to bring healthier meal opportunities for children. At the USDA, I realized that our federal government is systems deep and change is very challenging to realize in a federal policy landscape. And while that work is so important, I decided to try my hand at entrepreneurship, again, focusing on children, working to support educational development, children as young as 10, 11, 12, helping coach them through high school experiences, building resumes, and then getting into universities, gaining scholarship opportunities. And one of the things that I learned there that really intersected with that impact lens is that when you give that individualized attention to young people and you focus on their development and you work to drive towards them accomplishing their goals and incrementally lifting them, that you can see results. And had the opportunity at that firm that I founded, Ivy Admissions, to do pro bono work and to realize the power of storytelling and uniqueness in storytelling that students could actually do in their applications, and the results and value and acknowledgement that they could receive for that, for their telling their stories. I remember talking with some students in particular about how, your experiences that feel like gaps in a resume, for example, or gaps or the softer things. Those soft things also matter, and telling the stories of supporting your mom with helping to raise your siblings, or the summer jobs that you did because maybe you had to, that those stories, those experiences, and those skills that you learned still had power. I then went and did my PhD at Columbia University. I studied behavioral nutrition and neuroscience, the impact of early childhood the brain function in children at age 1 year, which was a phenomenal experience. And I would say that that in and of itself was a windy road, and I had a plan. And my plan was shifted in the founding of Our Next Energy by my father, Majub Ijaz. He founded the company during the pandemic. We were all kind of bunkered in California together. I had a 6-month-old daughter, and I saw what he was working to incrementally build, and decided to join the company a couple months into its founding after finishing my PhD. And so what I realized at One is that, you need to, in embracing equity and embracing that uniqueness, I found myself initially wanting to put myself in a box to say, I at U of M worked on a solar car project, therefore I deserve to be in this room to talk about batteries with you. And incrementally, I realized that that breadth and windy road of experiences and even being a mom is what makes me qualified to do the job that I'm doing, and not the box that society maybe tells me that I should fit within. So I've got to evolve my role at the company. I now lead all of our fundraising efforts with our finance team. We are bringing a $1.6 billion investment to the state of Michigan to bring a gigafactory. We will bring over 2,000 jobs through that factory. And what I am really excited about the opportunity of a new company as a manufacturer in this state, and I left Michigan for 10 years and coming back, is our ability to put equity at the center of what we're doing. And so with our factory, one of the things that I've been working to champion with other really phenomenal women and folks like Carla Walker-Miller, who I'm really grateful to call a mentor and a friend, is how do we bring wraparound services to our manufacturing workforce so you can drive towards gender pay? Because I realized in my first role at One, I was the senior director of program management. I had never been a program manager before. But in stepping into that role, I realized that being a mom is being a program manager. And so I think women have a lot to give. And we're working to bring childcare to our workforce. The state is championing a Tri-Share program, and we're working to lobby for that and even other opportunities. We want to bring mobility solutions to our workforce, because I've seen at this company that we've built really fast, but has also yielded a phenomenal culture. We're over 205 people. That is our strength. And that means that in order to achieve additional diversity, we have to have equity as our forefront. And so I think it's the role of companies, of entrepreneurs, to also champion the work that organizations like Walker-Miller Energy are doing, like the organization doing refugee workforce development. Like, we can champion that, because policy and nonprofit work has an opportunity for incremental change. But if you get the private sector to really partner with the public sector, to partner with the nonprofit spaces, we can then really drive change and drive impact. So, I'm really grateful to be here to share that story. I think the slides didn't really work, but I think we'll hit all the topics. Oh, you have them there. There you go. Okay. Well, childcare for manufacturing workforce, flex schedules, flex working, prioritizing health and wellness. We're prioritizing diversity fellowships, recruiting efforts. 20% of our workforce last summer were interns. So if you have ideas, we are here to help lift the work that you're doing. And thank you, Christy, and everyone, the Detroit Regional Chamber, for having me today. Thank you.
Please welcome the creator of Others Over Self, Shelley Rude.
All right, Eddies, following my briefing, you will be walking out those doors, headed down the road to the bunker. When you get there, your notebooks are going to be stored in the lockers. You will not take a piece of paper in my bunker, and you will not take a piece of paper out of my bunker. If I find a piece of paper on you, you will be put in a holding cell. I hope that you ate your Wheaties this morning, because that means that you are required to mentally retain all access codes as well as training materials that you are being taught today on the new technology system that you're going to be utilizing for the remainder of your time on Operation Full Eagle. Do you understand? That's Army Shelley, and she is really scary. You may have noticed that I am pregnant, and we're going to put her away for a while. I think that maybe we can bring her back for some intensity in the delivery room in a few months, yeah? We're going to let my husband deal with her. It's hard to believe that it was 18 years ago that I was giving that briefing in South Korea outside of an underground bunker. What I want you to know is that as an intelligence officer, I had a seat at the table. The majority of my career, 16 years in the Army Reserves, is still classified. I was responsible for the care of over 4,000 soldiers and millions of dollars of equipment, whether it be weapon systems, training, or even my favorite 9mm Beretta that went everywhere with me. Foot stomp means important point. You're going to get 3 today. Today marks the 75th anniversary of the Women's Services Armed Integration Act that expanded women's rights and put us on equal footing to be recognized for our contributions to our nation's defense. This year, 2023, 75 years. The United States military is still a male-dominated field, with roughly 15% being women. During my service time, often I was the only woman in the room, but I was never alone. Right now, there are women in high-profile decision-making positions within the military. Yes, we are flying the helicopters, and yes, we're telling them where to go. These are the faces of your Michigan military women. And they're here, they're home in our communities. And our skills don't necessarily translate into the civilian workforce. If you or a female that you know of is considering joining the military, yes, there is a place for her. And yet we are faced with the challenge of the workforce. Nicole flies Black Hawk helicopters. You don't just jump into another aircraft and start flying it around. She needs training. You can always ask Tina and her mother, that bottom corner picture. They know that there's a place for women in the military. Your female persuasion and ability to influence and your perspective are highly valued and needed. And so I don't really understand why the suicide rate for military women is double that of the civilian woman. Military conflicts are fought over resources such as oil and rubber trees, and the exchange of human life is extremely costly. The one thing that you can never replace is a human soul. And so, the most valuable resource that we have is each other. And when something is of great value, you protect it. Michigan's military women are a high-value asset, and it is our responsibility to protect them. These are the faces of Michigan's veterans. It's not just suicide. Our rates for other mental wellness issues, such as substance use and abuse, depression, anxiety, they're all higher than the civilian woman. I learned that the hard way. It took me 10 years to figure out how to work myself out of a cycle of domestic abuse or intimate partner violence. These women are not weak. They're strong women. They're the strongest women I know. And in fact, that's the problem. We're so strong that we can do it all, huh? Until we can't. And I remember one day getting my discharge orders. What do you mean I'm out? An administrative issue? Like I'm literally just out? Sitting in my car, trying to process it, tears strolling down my face, hearing a voice in my head, Shelley, do you have to be a soldier to serve the soldiers? And so that's what we do. For the last 5 years, I've been working and training and teaching people that what you do outside of the military is just as important as anything that you ever did in the military. It's living out your values that makes you valuable. It's not enough that you have values, you have to actually be living them out. Military people are highly coveted as employees because we know this, we live this, and we've proven it. And when people see value in you, you feel a deep sense of joy. Now, my wish here is for everyone in this room to have a deep sense of joy. Joy is not happiness. Joy is a sense of peace amongst conflict. And so here's my personal action plan for you to find joy. Remember that there is a place for her in the United States military, and that by lifting up each other, we will be able to feel and bring out our own joy. Army Shelley is amazing, and she shouldn't be running my life. We're going to keep her in her place. And if we've learned anything from the French Revolution, it's this: the best sustainability strategy is that the table has a seat for everyone. Thank you.
Please welcome Managing Director of Google and Site Lead of Google Detroit, Danielle Russell.
Today with you all. I'm Danielle Russell, Managing Director at Google Detroit, and fortunate to be the site lead for our Detroit office. Today, I am here to spend some time sharing with you the opportunity to create more inclusivity and embracing equity for women and for the underrepresented community. While it might not be easy, and it certainly won't happen overnight, I do want to celebrate the progress that we've made and reflect on where we go from here. Because if we dream it and believe it, we can achieve it. What did you want to be when you grew up? Sitting here today, take a moment to reflect. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I hear the chuckles in the room. This is messy, and it might sound like it's not, but it was pretty messy. I wanted to be like my idol, America's #1 at the time, Chris Everett. By the age of 19, I trained hard enough at the place where I could actually make that dream come true, and I entered my first professional tennis tournament. Now, that journey required me to take risks, stretch way outside of my comfort zone, spend a significant time away from my family, and stay in school and compete. If I'm being honest, that road was not easy, and there were many times when I didn't believe that I could make it. And as we sit here today, I think we all can reflect on who might have helped us to make that happen. I was really fortunate in my life that my father believed. He was my #1 fan, and he gave me the opportunity to pursue a dream that he did not have the chance to take at a similar time in his life. I was able to pursue that dream. And while going to school, I spent a number of years competing in professional tennis. It wasn't easy, but the love and support of my mom allowed me to continue to focus and be determined to get there. I played on the pro circuit, and after graduation, I reached top 600 in the world. Sounds good, right? No. That was the early 90s. And at the time, while women were reaching equity in pay in the sport, you needed to be in the top 100 in the world in order to really make a living. It was time for me to hang up my racket and say goodbye to the dream that I had pursued for so long. Looking back, I didn't really realize the inequality and the discrimination that really riddled the sport that I loved so much. In fact, in the early 70s, men in professional tennis were making as much as 12 times more than women in the tournaments. Men had the influence in the sport, and they had more opportunity to get sponsors. That was until, probably a number of you in this room know Billie Jean King. Billie Jean came into the sport along with 8 other professional women that you see on the screen. They were called the Original 9. And together they believed that they could make a difference. And as a result, they started their first women's professional tennis tournament. And they started the first women's tennis association. These women dreamed of a more equitable future for tennis. And so together, they worked to make that difference. A few proud moments in tennis that some of you may recall for both women and for underrepresented communities include Billie Jean King's win over Bobby Riggs in front of 90 million people, which helped the world start to understand the impact women could have in the sport. Billie Jean King went on to establish the Women's Tennis Association and to support the sport in a way as a vocal advocate. Other advocates include Martina Navratilova, who became an activist for women in the LGBTQ community. And then most recently, if you were a fan of tennis, you'd have seen Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams utilize their platform to ensure that we took note of the social and racial injustice. So what did I learn about tennis, and what did that bring as I entered the business community? 1, the importance of believing in myself, right, and being my own advocate. 2, the importance and value of a sponsor. As we all sit here today, we all benefited likely from the value of someone who believed in us when maybe we didn't believe in ourselves. I thank the Lord for my father and for him convincing my mother that it was okay to let me go and move away from home and pursue that dream. It was very uncertain, but it made me who I am today. It allowed me to be here with you today. And the third piece, which is what I really take forward from all those lessons that I learned, importance of being a sponsor, of being an advocate for others, like the Original 9, to help pave the way for those that may not have had exposure or the opportunity in front of them. In tech, it's important to understand some of the challenges that we face. Men represent 75% of the technical jobs in our space. White and Asians make up about 8% of the technical workforce. And women, while they may enter into the tech space, often leave the space by the age of 35, a turnover rate that's 250% more than other jobs in other industries. It's important that we spend our time in the tech space to support women and underrepresented communities to ensure that they can see a future for the road ahead. That's why today I just want to share with you a few things that I have done as a mentor, a sponsor, a consultant to support women in the underrepresented communities in tech. The first is some work with Google.org's Impact for Women and Girls. The work that we do there works to empower young women to ensure that they feel they are supported and can thrive in the technology space. I Dare for Sustainable Development is an organization in Jordan that works to provide a safe hub for women and helps them to learn creative technical skills. The Bridge International is a community that provides North Korean women, defectors, an opportunity to learn technical skills as well. And then similarly, the Trans Tech Social Organization works to provide LGBTQ women the opportunity to learn technical skills to support their future so that they can believe that they have that opportunity in technology. I also work within Google's community to support underrepresented communities, which also leaves the company at higher rates than their peers, making sure that they have an opportunity to feel they can be successful. And then in our own community, working with Wayne State graduate first-generation students to try and help them see the path to their career in building a career opportunity. Golf is my sport now. Can't really be as active on that court anymore. And golf took me to a new place in our community. Golf took me to want to continue to help fill the pipeline. The problem in technology is that you can't just go and enter the workforce. You need to start learning at a younger age because the education curriculum for tech jobs is often tailored to men and to whites and to Asians. So if we don't work to keep filling the tech pipeline and helping to ensure that younger generations can see their future in the space, then we are not solving the challenges. It brings me to golf in this quote here. First Tee Greater Detroit is an organization that I feel fortunate to be a part of. It's an organization that brings the game of golf to the youth in Metro Detroit. It teaches them resilience. It teaches them life skills. It teaches them self-confidence and the opportunity to see beyond where they currently can see. This quote is from a 12-year-old student, Riley. She's just been exposed to the game of golf. Riley says, "Golf is a sport like no other. It requires trust, patience, perseverance, and to challenge yourself to your limits. And it all starts with one swing." That's why I joined First Tee Greater Detroit. They have taught me not just about the amazing game of golf, but life itself. Spoken from the mouth of a 12-year-old girl. We all need someone's shoulders to stand on. Think about your life, think about your dreams, think about your opportunity that you're sitting here today. That's an important role that we can all play together, is helping others to see and achieve a dream that they might have not realized they can have. And so I just want to thank you, one, for listening to my story. It was messy. And two, for all the work that you as women pioneers and male allies have done and will continue to do so to support others. Thank you.
Please welcome the Chief Executive Officer at Green Door Initiative, Donnell Wilkins.
Hey y'all, how are you? I am so honored to be able to be before you today to share a little bit about my life's work and who I am. I happen to be fortunate to have founded and served as the CEO of two really interesting nonprofits focused on environmental justice. But first, let me tell you, you're looking at a born advocate. That's what I am. Didn't know that, but when I think back on my childhood, I was always the one organizing some kind of neighborhood activity, bringing people together. We were going to do plays and have concerts right in the backyards of our neighborhood. I happen to be the oldest of six, born and raised in Detroit by a single mom who became a widow very early on. And this is what's helped to launch me into sort of the professional work of advocacy. One, I saw the struggle that my mom was going through, just trying to make sure we all ate. My stepfather actually died. We don't know if what came first, the heart attack or the car accident. But he's on his way home from Chrysler, and it ended one night, right? His life. And it changed all of our lives. So in the process of that, here I am, 30 years later, or 30 years old, actually, and I'm entering into a space called focused on workforce development, focused on health and safety, particularly for Black workers who were disproportionately impacted by the jobs that they had access to. They worked in a factory like my dad. They were likely to be in the lowest paying and the most dangerous positions. And I believe with all my heart, it was because of what he did for a living that made his end a tragic one. And I decided that I wanted to make a difference around that. And that's what led me to what I'm doing today, which is focused on environmental justice. Anybody heard that term in this room? Just by show of hands. So for those, thank you, lots of folks who don't know, environmental justice really is about people who are disproportionately impacted by pollution and decisions around environmental protection and whatever that some people really take for granted. So the second nonprofit organization, I won't go in the first one, that was really ugly, dirty, and very hurtful, but it was kind of one of those takeover kind of deals. But after I got over myself and the pain of that, I began to think about what would environmental justice look like if it stood in front of me? If it had, would I recognize it? And I wanted to be able to recognize it. So God did something wonderful. He gave me another opportunity and let me know he hadn't changed his mind about me. I happen to believe people are born with purpose. And so the mission of the Green Door Initiative is to ensure that everyone is environmentally literate, capable of living out a sustainable lifestyle, regardless of income, regardless of zip code, and regardless of race. So that's what I'm doing today. And one of the things that helped to bring my work to this level is a really important study that took place back in 1987, revisited in 2007, and others are still researching this. But people of color, Black folks and others are disproportionately impacted by pollution. Not because they made the decision, but because of past practices around discriminatory housing policies that really required, based on race, decided where people live and what is built around them. Factories, freeways, those public health impacts that someone mentioned earlier really disproportionately impact people because of where they live. But the thing that really keeps me going in terms of embracing equity and doing the work that I do is this person, Xavier Joe. Anybody ever met Xavier? You wouldn't. I learned about Xavier in 2012. He was 10 years old. I was listening to a news story, getting ready for dinner in the house, and I heard about a little boy that died because he could not breathe. And he died in his mother's arms in their driveway because she didn't have access to an automobile. Do you know that some up to 62% of people in certain neighborhoods in Detroit don't have access to an automobile? And Detroit happened to be one of those places where access to public transit is a real problem. This young man impacted my life that year, and I decided I was going to do everything I could to make sure that there was equity when it comes to where people live, safe drinking water, whether or not they're exposed to lead poisoning or toxic releases. This is every dot you see on this picture in Detroit represents some kind of environmental issue, some kind of environmental release into the air, into the water, and into the land. Remember, I'm that born advocate. And so I just want to give you the official sort of definition of environmental justice. It is the fair treatment of people of all races, cultures, and income with respect to development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws. There really isn't equal protection under the law unless we fight for it. Regulations, programs, and policies. Fair treatment means that no racial, ethnic, or socioeconomic group should bear a disproportionate burden of the negative environmental consequences. And it goes on in terms of who makes those decisions. It is time for people who are disproportionately impacted to have a voice, and the time is now. You cannot open a paper or newspaper, well, you can't really these days, or look at, right, television or listen to radio and not hear about climate change, not hear about environmental issues. But what's missing woefully are the voices of people who bear the greatest burden of that. And that's what our work does. That's what I do to ensure that there is equity, equal access to environmental protection for all. That's what keeps me in the game of embracing equity. Thank you.
Joining Donnell on stage, please welcome back Deanna Ahmed, Shelley Rude, and Danielle Russell. And to moderate the discussion, Christy McDonald.
Is everyone good on the stools? We all right? Okay, there you go. Great.
Practiced earlier.
You know, I'm so glad that you practiced or that came early practice. You know, see, over preparing. I'm sure you guys know nothing about that. It's women in the room, right? Over preparing for things. There's a lot that I want to talk about that you all touched on a lot of things in adaptation, really, and growth. But I want to start off, and I want to ask each one of you from the field that you're in, because we're talking about making sure that there is more of us in the room. In the complexity of the different ways that we've been raised and brought up, and bringing our stories to a space can really make decisions very different and be able to reflect more people. So I want to ask where each one of you are, because when we talk about tech and sustainability, it's a constantly changing atmosphere. And so maybe I will just start with you first, Deanna, and talk about where you feel you are when you walk into the room in more women in your industry, and where the growth is.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're really at the intersection of tech and sustainability. So I would say that, you know, we're starting to see and feel more and more diversity, more and more women in these spaces. I think to your point, it's really important because instead of looking at technology as an engineering problem that we need engineers exclusively for, we're starting to be able to, and in our company in particular, say holistically engineering technology is the tool that impacts people. And so our company is trying to be very human-centered. And so in that way, we're bringing voices of women, diverse voices to the table to help influence decision-making, to then drive impact. And I think that human-centered approach is helping to drive us there. That being said, I'm still very often the only woman of color on any and a lot of the, you know, tech, engineering panels and events that we go to. So I think that there's still a lot of work to be done, and bringing a lot more of these voices into those spaces, because that's where disruption happens. And that's where you can start to shift the perspectives of those who have been kind of living in their own echo chamber.
Yeah. Is there a moment or a story that you want to share of being in a room like that?
I did a panel in downtown Detroit with Automotive News maybe 2-3 months ago. And I think just like presenting differently than others, you know, makes you sometimes perceived as an afterthought. And so, you know, what kind of felt this very palpable difference of arriving and getting ready to go on stage, and the dudes are all talking to themselves, and I'm just like standing here. And then we go on stage and I say things that are absolutely different from what they have to say because I have different perspectives. Yeah. And then you notice there's shifts and they're like, oh, what you talking about over there? But, you know, I am enjoying those experiences because I think it's so important, because I have agency and access right now, and we need to be then lifting and providing more agency and access. And you talked about standing on the shoulders and of others. And I have been given that opportunity here in Michigan by very amazing women who have been in this space, and they're providing that platform. And now I think it's my job to continue to do that. And I think if we continue to lift, men are not going to know what hit them. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to you because I want you to, and I will ask each one of you when you were in that uncomfortable moment or how you got comfortable with leaning into saying something completely different from the rest of the panel. So think about that for a minute. Shelley, let me go to you in terms of space when you're talking about women in the military and then coming back out again. How would you assess kind of where we stand right now today?
Right now, today, we're doing the incredible things. We're there. We're not only flying the helicopters, we're telling them where to go. We have the highest level of access to the information. The difference is that we don't get credit for it. Why? Well, on one hand, we're not very good self-promoters. I don't know that that's a bad thing from a spiritual standpoint. And in the same breath, if we are not going to be able to celebrate ourselves and our own personal accomplishments for reasons of being humble, which is great, then perhaps we could be a little bit better at celebrating each other.
Yeah.
Can I point out to
Yeah.
you, Tina? She was in the picture with her mom. Wave, Tina. Woo! Tina's a young business owner. She's one of my coworkers, and she also is deploying later this year. So there's your chance. Lift up another woman.
Thank you for your service. Danielle, you talked a lot about, you gave us some good numbers, metrics, and sometimes it's really, the data speaks for itself. And talking about the number of women who are leaving tech. When you are walking in rooms with Google and talk about where women stand right now within your company, and when you're talking to other tech industries about retaining women in tech.
We are continuing to work on this. Google works very hard, and our programs are very focused on ensuring that we stay in the technology space. Now, that means participating as a woman and as allies in those types of programs, both within the company and as we go out into speaking in places like this. Education, building that pipeline for women and for the underrepresented communities is the most important thing we can do, because that allows us to feel more comfortable in those rooms. And I think that is the challenge. So serving as a mentor and a sponsor to ensure that you continue to feel supported and you know the journey ahead is what's most important. And that's, as a company, we're working really hard to ensure that everyone feels they have a sponsor and a mentor to be involved. And I'd say really quickly, I spend the majority of my time with my team out with Fortune 500 companies. And that equally is a challenge, is when you enter a room and other industries. I spent my initial time in my business career in automotive, and there were many times when you were the only woman in the room. So continuing to ensure that whether it's your own family, I have a daughter who didn't enter computer science courses because she said all the kids in the class were boys. We have to start to be proponents at a very young age in supporting that journey.
When you say supporting that journey, and specifically when we look at women who are in your workplace, what does that mean? Does that mean, Deanna kind of enumerated some of the things like childcare, like maternal leave, like, what are some of the specifics that you think would make women feel more supported in tech?
Yeah, I think tech has a great maternity and leave program. And I think a number of other industries continue to pursue very supportive leaves. It is as much about the skills and the comfort and the interaction with other industries that you spend your time doing every day. Okay. So it's that type of skills and education and continuing to fill the rooms that will help you to feel that you can continue to thrive.
Well, and having the confidence of being in that room
right.
as well, and knowing that there is also a place for advancement, that there's a path there. I think is really important as well. Donnell, let me get to you. And it struck me when you spoke and you said, we talk a lot about things, but we don't hear from the people who are impacted by it, and especially when you're talking about environmental justice. And I think the first thing that should hit everyone's mind is thinking about that is Flint. What happened with the Flint water crisis, that is an exact point of what you're talking about. But when you're in this space and advocating in this way, where do you find yourself in the rooms? And is there more people that, that need to reflect?
Wow. So I have that double whammy. I happen to be a woman and I happen to be African American. And there's not many places where we're welcome in the room around these topics, especially in the beginning of my work. I've had to knock down doors and just make myself be there. And being afraid, but speaking anyway, because the thought is, who else that looks like me, that happens to be a woman, can be in this room to be speaking to these issues? It had to be me. So I've sat on several advisory councils from the state to the local, federal. I have gone to the rooms. I actually went to 2 conference of party meetings that the United Nations sponsor, just came back from Egypt. Why? They need to hear the voice of people impacted all over the world. And I happen to believe, this is my belief, that because of my purpose, God opened those opportunities and I have to take advantage of it. But it has not been easy. I remember once in particular under Granholm's administration, being appointed to her Environmental Advisory Council, the head of the Department of Environmental Quality at the time, happened to be a white male, approached me and said, Donnell, we really need your voice on this committee. We're going to have the governor appoint you, but we want to move environmental justice in this state. And I accepted that charge, but everybody in the room was representing major industry, from the chemical industry to manufacturing. They did not look like me nor sound like me, right? And regardless of that, we established our first environmental justice policy in the state of Michigan, even with all the shenanigans and whatever that went on. Right? Spoke before once on a panel for the Chamber of Commerce way back in the day, and I'm meaning in the 90s, and being hissed when I walked in the room. And, just being disrespected.
So let me expand upon that with everyone, because again, we talked about I worked really hard. It was very difficult. And then I get here and Deanna, you kind of talked about it, about being on stage and saying something that's a little bit different. And you are all at these places of confidence, of growth, of cultivating skills to be able to present in this way. And I think that there's got to be a lot of women out here in the room that say, how did you get there in that way, in having confidence in message and in showing up? Shelley, let me start with you on that.
Practice. Rehearse. Not a joke. Write it down, script it out, say it over and over and over again, and tell yourself what you want to tell yourself. If it doesn't sound right, fix it, change it. I actually give a talk called Seize Your 7 Seconds, and it's about making an amazing first impression, making the first impression that you want to make, not the first impression. If you're tired of what other people are saying about you, you might want to take a look at their perspectives. And you don't have to change yourself, but we are playing a sales game. When we're out in the world trying to make a difference, if people won't listen to you, the message won't be heard. And so, like it or not, if you want to get to that next level, if you want to be a player, if you want to take the stage, then you're going to have to figure out how to craft a message that your audience is actually going to listen to. And that's not an easy task at all.
Deanna, let me bounce it over to you in terms of the security. And you said, embracing the winding road and not just in the box. Oh, I'm going to take my engineering, and that's how I can talk to you about batteries, and feeling that freedom, getting over that imposter syndrome to say, this is my point of view, and it is different than yours.
Yeah, I think it's about embracing your expertise and honoring your expertise. And, men are very good at this. and sometimes are very capable of over like stating their expertise and sometimes. And I think it's about, saying things that are evocative, but backing it up with evidence. Like, for example, I think the most controversial I've been in a setting was at the Mackinac Policy Conference, talking about what can the state do to have workforce development matter, to bring more investments to the state. And, I'm like saying my lines that I feel like are the right lines. And then I'm reflecting and I'm like, actually, childcare is workforce development. And it's incredibly exclusionary. It's not accessible. I had to work 6 months to get childcare for my toddler. I have a phenomenal mom, and that's how I do what I do. And so women help women for sure. But I'm able to now talk about that, but then I'm leaning on evidence. And I'm like, I will show you the business case as to why this is something we should invest in as a company. We should invest in even as a state, because there's actually a business case to be made. Because when you bring in more people into the workforce, because now they have support services, because how in the world is a mom supposed to have children under the age of 5 and then have a career, And then with leaves, one of my dear colleagues from Columbia now works at One, instrumental in bringing our grant package from the state to fruition. She's on 4 months maternity leave right now with her first child. And it's because we are working together that I'm like, take your space and you're going to come back exactly to the same role. This is not a career interrupter for you, because women have to deal with that all the time. And so it's like conveying that evidence and being evocative and knowing that your expertise is there, because we can actually support why we want what we want with facts.
All right, so preparation, evidence, and then Danielle, let me go to you, because you talk about see it, believe it, achieve it. And again, for people who do not play tennis, the sport of tennis is a very intense mental game as well as a physical game. And it takes intensive wiping away of something that just happened and intensive belief of your success moving forward. Where is a moment that you would have had to adapt and change in your career to have the confidence of, yes, this is what my message is, and I make no apologies for it?
Sure. I didn't start in business and tech. I started in advertising. My hard work, right? I think everyone in this room works hard, right? That's its core, I think, to so many of our beliefs. The opportunity is in having someone that can show you the way. And without that visibility, you don't necessarily know where that hard work can take you. Just sitting at our table today, we were talking, I wouldn't know how to get into the fields of these women myself, sitting here today, unless I'm exposed to it. So the importance of your network, and that takes another tremendous amount of time from women who already have very busy lives in supporting your family and in supporting your own individual growth. But I do really reinforce the importance of continuing that network and sponsoring others and helping them see what's possible, regardless of their age, whether they're a young adult trying to find their way, or they're one of us that is in their 50s and is trying to figure out what our next direction should be. So helping each other and attending things like this to be a sponsor and a network and a mentor will help us all and raise us all up to where we
It's a great next jump to Danielle. Let me ask you about working with people from all different age groups and levels. And talking to Deanna and saying, I have the ability to start to think about the change that I want to see in the business world, because it wasn't that way 20 years ago, but my generation wants it this way. What's the difference between a Gen X, millennial, I think, partnership and working and respecting the different generations and what the foresight's going to be?
That's a really good question. I think we even touched on that a little bit today about the expectations of certain generations, like Gen X, who's ready to be the CEO after spending 6 weeks on the job sometimes, right? But as someone who's over 60 now, it's really crucial that I'm thinking about the future and who to pass the baton to. And it's thoughtfulness in doing that and investing all along the trajectory to ensure that there's a healthy, strong foundation, one that I leave behind, but one that others can stack on top of. Someone earlier said, you know, on the shoulders. We all have to have some shoulders. I hope I am one of those shoulders that people truly can stand in. And I work to make sure that those other generations are on my staff. We invest in young people. Teenagers have a summer job in our organization over the summer for 8 weeks, 16 to 19-year-olds, to introduce this work and career paths to them. It's being intentional. It's respecting the different ways that generations approach the work. I have people who are as old as 70 on my staff and young as like 20, 25 or
The
so.
lunch table has got to be awesome. I mean, that just must be.
Yeah, I have to remember I can't eat like a 17-year-old.
Love that. Shelley, let me ask you the same thing, and generationally looking and working together and listening to the voices in different styles, really. You're laughing.
I'm laughing because you also have organizational excellence. And I recall my last position as head of Intel, one of my soldiers, female, young, came in and she had bright red hair. That's cool if you work in the civilian world and you want to express your individuality. You do not do that in a military setting, especially not on the day the general is visiting. And so it is fun and it's unique to be on the other side of that. And I think I'm kind of still young myself, and I respect a need for individuality, and every single human being is, right, fearfully and wonderfully made. And yet, if all we ever do is focus on ourselves, how are we ever going to work together to do something bigger? And respecting the focus and the vision of the organization, right? If you work for or are employed by or are connected to an organization or a company, then it is your mission to support their mission, period, hands down. That should be your goal every day you walk in the door. If you're not doing that, if you're just trying to get ahead, or I don't know why people work. I don't know why people work for a lot of things. But what you're going to find is you're always going to be unfulfilled. And the best time that I have ever had is when I was able to kind of put myself aside and just do the work that I was asked to do and do it with joy and watch that higher purpose and that higher mission take off. And I want to see more of that. I don't care if you have purple hair as long as you're contributing to the bigger mission and the bigger vision. That's amazing.
Deanna, let me ask you, in terms of education, sometimes I think there's a lot of us out there that have children who are going into college, and we want them when they're 18 to figure out exactly what they're going to do, because they're going to graduate in 4 years, then they're going to get that job, they're going to do this, they're going to go here. Can you tell I have a freshman in college right now? And I'm like, 4 years, that's all you've got, then you're out. But
We can trade notes.
we definitely trade notes. But I think that it's interesting is we see the different paths that everyone has taken on this stage, that, we're not going into a vocation. It's that we have the freedom. I mean, you had neuroscience, your doctorate, you're doing something different now. What would you say to people about the freedom to choose that path and to be open to the fact that it might change?
Yeah, I love openness with respect to education. I think that when we become overly rigid to ourselves or with young people, we minimize their ability to be creative. So I always, with my students with Ivy admissions, would talk about, okay, what do you like doing and why? And what are those skills that you want to develop? Because skills are transferable. We talk about that a lot in even our workforce development space with bringing a new type of manufacturing to Michigan. Skills are transferable. Like, there's workforce that can transfer skills and arrive at this new point. So I think that that's really important, is to acknowledge and value the skills that people develop and not necessarily those traditional pathways that allow you to arrive somewhere. Because, like I did systems change research at Columbia in scratch cooking in some schools in the Bronx program, spent a year doing that work. And I bring that systems change research to one every single day because I learned some skills. And so I love that openness and that ability to have creativity. And then our ability, as we're evaluating folks to come in, you can mentor and teach content and then derive value and benefit. And even that person coming in can derive value and their own intrinsic benefit and joy from applying the skills that they have.
All right, we've got a couple questions I want to get to before we end here today. Someone wrote, as a career services professional, we often suggest students that they learn to describe themselves and their strengths in 3 words. So this person wants to know from each person, what would be the 3 words to describe your strengths? Donnell, I'm going to start with you.
Leadership, courage, knowledge.
Love it. Danielle, you want to go next?
Sure. Listener, hard worker, and agile.
Shelley.
Am I allowed to ask the crowd to tell me what they think?
Does anyone want to take a stab at Shelley's? Strong? Determined? Disciplined?
I like that one.
That was a very clever panelist way of saying, I'm not answering that. I'm going to let the room take it over on that. All right, Deanna, you're
I love
3.
the crowdsourcing of that.
That is.
I think teacher, student, and compassion. I don't know if those are the right types of words, but yeah.
They're good. All right. Quickly, just with the time we're going to have here, what is the one thing each panelist would suggest for women to do to help them feel comfortable with advancing their career? Donnell, you want to start?
I'll start with believing in yourself that you can do it and having the confidence, exerting the confidence in yourself to move forward on your dreams.
Since she said believing in yourself, that was the first thing you saw in my slide. I would +1 that to add, find a sponsor, reach out to anyone, reach out to me, find someone that will help you believe in yourself as well.
Shelley?
And taking it further than just believing in yourself, finding someone who is doing what you want to do. Somebody's already out there doing it. There is a woman out there already doing what you are dreaming of doing. What I have found is that, sorry, but men can be a little more closed off to a meeting. Women can be a little more open-minded.
Yeah.
Find bravery, reach out to somebody that you don't know who she is, send her an email, call her, go to her office, say, I love you, I love what you're doing, I want to be a mini you, please teach me.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so
we always say yes.
yeah, no, I mean,
we do say yes.
okay, so this is really interesting. Can you tell me, each one of you, can you describe who your mentor was? Shelley, who was your mentor? Who were you talking about in your head? Who did you do that to?
I wasn't very good at that. I'm starting, Tammy Carnegie.
Really? So this is something that you've kind of come upon that's saying,
I
this is
should have
something that
done
I
it.
should have done.
I should have done it 20
Okay.
years ago. I absolutely should have done it. Now I'm a small business owner trying to figure out how do I keep my business from going under, because it's amazing. It's not going to go under. Women are already doing it. Come help me.
There you go. Danielle, what about you? Who was the mentor? Yeah.
Yeah, one of my first managers. I found that connective tissue in someone who took an initial step in believing in me, and she continued to move on. She was based here in Detroit, moved to New York. She now works for a venture capitalist firm doing something I don't know how to do. And in my journeys and decisions I needed to make, I've always gone back to her. One piece of advice that she told me that I would love to share with you is when I looked at my resume, when I looked at what I wanted to try and do next, she always asked me, is it additive? Think about if it's additive to what will make you whole, will make you happy. Don't just do it because you need to do it. Do it because it's additive to who you are and who you want to be.
Janelle, who was your mentor? That was, yeah, excellent.
Her name was Nida Donor. And Nida, when I was a young person working for a nonprofit back in the day, she became the executive director and she interviewed everyone. And she said, I sat down, I was the only person of color on the team. And she said, Donnell, whether you see yourself in 5 years. And I really wanted to learn how to write grants and proposals and never had the opportunity to do that. And so I said, I want to know how to write a grant. She said, okay. A day or so later, she hands me this proposal and said, write it. I've never written a grant before. What do you mean, write it? She said, write it. And I did. And it got funded. Like, this is somebody. And if it were not for her belief in me,
She gave you the opportunity.
she saw it in me when I didn't see it in me. And I'm able to now have run 2 successful nonprofits, started myself, and it was because NIDA donor believed in me.
Deanna, tell me about your mentor, and then I'm going to let you answer this question too.
Probably many in this room know my current mentor is Carrie Dugan, and she's amazing and has taught me quite a lot about this space and how we can forge really powerful public-private partnerships.
Does she know that she's your mentor? And did you say, I want you to be? Like, how did you approach her?
It's so funny. The first meeting I had with her, she was introduced by one of our board members to the company and as a prospective advisor. And I was very nervous because I understood her pedigree. And I get in the meeting and she's like, starts, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm in the airport. It's a little noisy. And she's like, no problem. This is me. This is my team. We're all women on purpose. And then I was like, I love you. But no, she's a door opener. She's a relationship builder. She has built so many relationships for us and puts her kind of reputation on the line to build those relationships for another person. And I think that that's really powerful. To piggyback on that train of additive, I think it's about believing in yourself to advance your own career and to take space. I often find myself trying to be the most succinct when then others take like a good amount of space. I'm just gonna say men take a good amount of space to say the things that they want to say. So take your space and believe in yourself to do things that maybe you aren't necessarily qualified to do yet, but you have the tenacity and the hard work and the grit to do it. Like I co-led our last fundraise of $300 million. And to do that, no one would have predicted that I should be able to do that. And I had great partners and support. But we were able to do that. And so it was because I believed in myself.
I had a mentor in television. Mary Conway was a longtime reporter with Channel 7 at ABC. And she taught me to always be prepared. And I always had like snow boots in the car with me. I never wore heels as a reporter out there. And she said, and she's from Wisconsin, and she had this great Wisconsin accent. She's like, Christy Mack, you got to make sure you got a big can of hairspray in that truck. And now I will have to say, but the importance of also turning it around. It's so funny, Danielle, you said, we always say yes. If you call us and say, I need a mentor, or do you have moments of time? I am now mentoring a couple people in behind the scenes and as well as, as a journalist on television. And it is also that rewarding give back of being able to sit and listen and say, I think what I hear you saying is this right? Let's talk about maybe next steps. And well, we're not going down the road yet. Let's just concentrate on the first 2 things. And then when we have answers to that, we can move from there. Yeah, Shelley.
I think it's important when you're looking for a mentor, don't expect her to be everything. I always say someday I'll write a book and it's going to be called She Will Have It All. And that's probably why I say I don't have a mentor, because if I look back honestly for every different facet of my life, I have a different mentor. I wanted to be in the clergy. I'm actually a chaplain now. I'm a ordained minister. And so I found a female who did that and lived that path, and I connected with her, and that was amazing. And I've had women in the military that have guided me along the way, and I've had women who are business women who have helped me there. That doesn't mean that they're good mothers. And so I'm trying to look for that really good mother, right? That I can look to and see what I think right looks like in the motherhood field and follow her down that path. This is my 3rd, by the way. Screwed up a lot.
Shelley, I have 3 teenagers. Good luck. We're all counting on you. All right. As we kind of wrap here, I want to get to a last question here from our audience. And thank you again so much. How do each of you prioritize and balance wellness in your day-to-day busy life? And if you get off balance, which we all do, How do you find your way back? It's a great question. Benno.
Have a devastating life event occur. And I didn't know how to do that in the beginning. And so I shift because I talked about another organization that got out of my hand, was removed from my hands. While right after that, I ended up in the hospital with a pulmonary embolism, massive. In fact, the radiologist who took the images said he needed to meet someone who survived that because he never met anybody like that.
Wow.
That's why I believe there's a God. I come out of that room, out of that whole process, healthy and free from all of that, but made a decision. And you have to start, the earlier, the better, but start where you are. Make yourself, self-care, you as a priority, whatever that is. Eating right, I had to lose weight. I brought in, movement and exercise and all of that to change what the path I was going to. Otherwise, I would not be here.
Yeah.
So it is something that's real. And I say, start now. You deserve it. You deserve it.
Nice. Yeah. Deanna, what about you? Let me bounce over to you.
Yeah, the past 3 years have been intense as an understatement. We've been nonstop. And the start of this year, I reflected on this question quite a bit. And I realized that we need to focus on the things that bring joy. And for me, that was carving out that time to be with my daughter. It was also carving out that time to do something for me, because we will put ourselves at the bottom of every list. Always, women do that. So you have to put yourself a little bit higher. So I'm focusing on, being present where I need to be present and saying no to things, because we can't always be everywhere. And if you donate all of yourself, you have nothing left to continue. So I think it's like about incubating your power and focusing on yourself, and then sharing kind of those opportunities also to sometimes take for someone else to be lifted up and take something that maybe you can't take.
Yeah. Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, so
Any rec tennis leagues that we'd like to join?
no, I always communicate with my team to don't do as I do, do as I say. I will be the first to admit I'm absolutely terrible in this place. I think as I've learned about myself over time, a lot of it has to do with the things that I gave up at my young age to try and pursue that dream. It built me in a way. And so I have to work, to be honest, really hard to give myself the time and the space. COVID was an interesting experience for me because I travel all the time. And I never thought, I have two amazing children, I never thought I was missing things in their lives. I would take a red eye home. I would do everything to get there. And it wasn't until COVID, and they've graduated from college, I realized what I did miss. I just missed the peace and the quiet with them. And so again, do as I say, not as I do. I'm trying. And for me, I find my peace in exercise. It's not tennis. It's really just putting on my tennis shoes, because when my kids were young, that was the quickest form of exercise for me, and finding that peace of mind. So whatever it is for you, to find that peace of mind, to give you the space to reflect and try and find balance, is all I wish for you. I really do.
Thank you for being so transparent about that too, about that it's a struggle. It is. Shall you get the last word on this one?
Well, I used to be a professional in the fitness industry. After I had my first baby, I was on stage for a bodybuilding competition.
Wow.
Oh,
So I'm going to say that wellness, you have to define that, number one. I'm not impressed by people who have big, high-paying dollar CEO jobs, 12 divorces, and, For me, what success looks like is first and most important. And so based off of that, the wellness program follows. I also believe that your steps are already ordered, and that quite literally all you have is today. I know 2 families who have lost their young children who just didn't wake up with a breath. If all you have is today, the Doritos need to be a part of that picture. And maybe the answer is yes, that's okay. So when you're looking at how can I get the most out of my day, I believe that you should be leading from the front. And so what is it going to take for you and your value system to be leading from the front? What does that look like? You don't get to eat a hot dog and tell your kid to eat a salad.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that we are going to have to leave it there. Give it up for these women who are phenomenal. I just want to say before we leave you today, another thanking of the presenting sponsor today, Walker Miller Energy Services. Our gold sponsors, First Merchants Bank, Henry Ford Health, and Forvia Hella for being our gold sponsors. And our silver sponsors, Enbridge and Visit Detroit. Thank you so much for that. That is going to do it for our program today. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Go be great, and we'll see you again back here next year. Thank you, ladies.